This is my personal home that we're in today, and I have definitely taken quite a bit of time to let this space speak to me and to find just the right pieces that really tell my story. You know, I joke when I have friends over in my home that I bought this home for two reasons. One, I have a very large mirror. It's about 5 feet by 8 feet. And when I first walked in and saw this townhome, I instantly went to that wall and measured, and it was the perfect fit for my mirror. And there's also a powder room on the main floor, so I don't have to send guests upstairs. So those were really the two things that sold me before I even saw the rest of the space. I affectionately called this project from sold to sold. And what I mean by that is this was a brand new builder grade space when I purchased it. And I really wanted to infuse my personality. I wanted this to be my safe haven. And I took the time and let this space really reveal to me what it wanted to be as well. And that's where the souled piece of it comes from, because this really is my soul on display. Buying a brand new builder grade home, this one in particular, in a way was a blessing because it was such a blank canvas. It was very sterile, very basic materials. And it allowed me to really come in and infuse my character into this space. There were things that I knew that I wanted to do immediately when I took possession of this home. The kitchen, I had a really strong idea of what direction I wanted that to go. The kitchen was quite a transformation. Most notably, there had been upper cabinets across here, and I really wanted a tile vent hood. My solution, since I was taking away this storage, was to add some floating shelves, which took care of the extra storage that I needed. So once that problem was solved, I was very comfortable with moving forward and having this done. This is a Zalij tile, which is a handmade terracotta from Morocco. And it was really my jumping off point for this entire home, because this was the one thing that I knew I wanted to do. Real wood on the floating shelves, real stone on the countertops. And I had all the cabinetry painted, Pharaoh and Ball mouses back. And once the foundation was set, then it was about bringing in the really personal pieces. I have this antique radio that had belonged to my grandparents on their cattle ranch in Montana. And when my father was growing up, this was their entertainment. Everybody gathered around the radio to listen to what was going on. And I think they got a show called the Saturday Night Barn Dance or something like that out of Idaho on their ranch in Montana. So they really looked forward to tuning into that once a week. And this was their entertainment, and now it's with me. Brought in my grandmother's old crock and other little pieces that mean a lot to me. My mom gave me a set of brass goblets that she had purchased when we lived in Thailand. She also gifted me the rooster that's sitting up there, who I affectionately call Pepper. That is a Lewis Mulcahy piece, who is an artist from Dingle, Ireland. One of my clients gifted me, we call this baby chamois. She gifted me this shamrock. It was much smaller when she gave it to me, but it's been happy here. Also bringing in more personal lighting, getting rid of that builder grade sense that this space had, and trying to make it feel aged and authentic. And the pieces that are in here really speak to who I am. And I like having things that just make me smile as I walk around my home, and the kitchen certainly does that. This piece sat in the dirt behind our horse stables when I was a little girl for decades and decades. And when my parents sold and moved closer to where my sister and I are, we were clearing everything out, and I grabbed this, didn't know what I was going to do with it, but it turns out it's absolutely perfect for holding all of my cookbooks. And a lot of these cookbooks are really special to me too. Several of them are from the decade that I spent living in San Francisco, French Laundry, Boulevard, which is one of my favorite restaurants in San Francisco. And I'll share with you one of my favorite pieces. This little book was made to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of Williams-Sonoma. And it is a compilation of stories that all of us as corporate employees submitted about our favorite memories with Williams-Sonoma. And inside this book, so I was friendly with Chuck Williams' personal assistant. So when this book was published, I had her give a copy to Chuck to sign for me. And this is a picture of me with Chuck Williams at one of our company events. That night, he and I sat together at a table, just the two of us, and he shared his life story with me, and I will never forget that night. It's truly one of my favorite memories. So this little book is especially meaningful to me. So I really wanted a soothing palette in the living room because I don't have an entryway, and it's the first thing that my guests see when they enter my home. So I wanted it to feel very welcoming and an instant cozy feeling. I've filled this space with things that are very personal to me. One of my favorite pieces in the living room is this photo that was taken about 100 years ago on my grandparents' cattle ranch in Montana. And this cute little guy sitting in front is my father with his older sister and older brother. There are several pieces sprinkled throughout here that had belonged to my father. This was one of his first cameras that he ever bought. The pottery down here sat on his desk for as long as I can remember. I don't remember ever being a time that I didn't see it sitting there, actually. And then this was a pair of his binoculars. So I just love having these memories surrounding me when I'm home and relaxing. I have these printer stamps sitting right by my front door because they're such a special piece to me. One of my good friends in Oklahoma actually found those in a bin at a antique store, salvage store in Oklahoma City called Dead People's Stuff. And I was going through a difficult divorce at the time and wasn't sure where home was going to be and what the future was going to look like. And she walked up to me with these stamps that say "found again," which was just so special to me. So they sit right here. One of my prized possessions in this space, actually, I have a Thai chofa, which is the roof finial on Buddhist temples. It is from approximately 1830, and what I love about that piece is chofas typically are very ornate. They're usually covered in gold leaf or colorful tiles. This particular piece, I know, lived in a very remote village in Burma. There's nothing ornate about it. It's the original teak. It has dried moss all over it. Very unassuming and humble. And I can just imagine the surroundings that it sat in for who knows how long, but a very long time. It's definitely one of my pieces that if I had to grab something in a fire besides my dog, it would be one of the pieces that I would take out the door. My book collection is also here. I think most designers have I don't want to call it unhealthy, a healthy obsession with collecting books, and I am no exception to that. So you'll find them scattered throughout my home, but especially in the living room, because I want people to feel like they can just curl up on the sofa and grab a book. The layout of this living room was not my original plan. I originally had the back of the sofa to the wall with my large mirror. So when you walked in the front door, you walked along the back of the sofa. It felt a little bit cramped to me, and I knew it wasn't quite the right layout, but I sat with it for a little while, and I find that when you do that and you let a space speak to you, it tends to reveal how it wants pieces to lay out. So one night, I got ambitious and emptied everything out of this room and reconfigured it so that the sofa backed to the kitchen and the TV became less of a focal point. And as soon as I put the pieces in place, I knew that's exactly how it was meant to be. The console that I have in this space is a special piece to me. I had found something similar in one of the large retailers that everybody knows, but it was much shorter. It was only 24 inches tall, and I really wanted a console that looked exactly like that, but I wanted it at counter height. So I had a very dear friend, High Country Fine Furnishings, Eric Winnie, very talented furniture maker, make this piece for me. It's solid white oak. It's very heavy. And for a little while, I just kept it the way that he had built it. But as I got settled into my home, and you'll see this at some point as we go through this tour, in my powder room, I had an integrated soapstone sink made, which only needed about half a slab of soapstone. But as most of us know, you have to buy the full slab. So I sat with a remnant piece of soapstone in my garage for quite a while. And one day I was sitting here in the living room, and it just hit me that a soapstone top on this console would be amazing. So I measured it, I measured the remnant, and what I quickly discovered was I had enough soapstone to do it, but I did not have the length to do it without a seam in it. And I didn't want to do And I didn't want to do a traditional seam. I didn't want it to look like I was trying to hide the seam or trying to convince people that this was a full solid piece of soapstone. And it struck me, let's have some fun with it. Let's make this seam front and center. So I actually borrowed a concept from furniture making, and my fabricator fortunately was up for trying this. We had the seam cut in a dovetail seam like you would find on good quality furniture pieces. We didn't seal it together. They can lift up and come apart like a puzzle. I wanted it to be very obvious and just a touch of whimsy in the space. So in the powder room, I again knew the direction that I wanted to go. I have a leather mirror with brass studs that has a special story behind it. The first time I went to Santa Fe, I had gone with some coworkers. We had gone to lunch at the Orr House, which it doesn't anymore, but it sat right on the plaza. And after lunch, we crossed the plaza and there was a furnishing store that's unfortunately no longer there. But as we were walking through, I turned the corner and was stopped in my tracks by this amazing mirror. Turns out it was handmade in Spain, and I just fell in love with it, but I didn't buy it. I went back, at the time I was living in San Francisco, so I went back to my home in San Francisco, and a year later, I was still thinking about that mirror, and I couldn't remember the name of the store, but I remembered the name of the restaurant across the plaza. So I called the restaurant. Lovely person answered the phone, and I said, this is going to sound crazy, but if you walk out your front door and look directly across the plaza, there's a furniture store. And they were kind enough to give me the name and the phone number, and I called the store, and they incredibly still had the mirror. So I purchased it on the spot and had it shipped to San Francisco, and it's been with me ever since. So the powder room is really my tribute to Santa Fe, because Santa Fe really touches my soul. So I've put several pieces in there that I found in Santa Fe, in particular the mirror. As I mentioned when we were talking about the living room and the countertop, I bought a prefab restoration hardware vanity, but it just had a very basic rectangular floating sink, or not floating sink, vessel sink. I really wanted to do something a little more special with that, so I had my local stone fabricator make an integrated soapstone sink that we put on the top of the restoration hardware vanity. It was really important to me that there be a flow throughout the home. I don't like rooms to be jarring departures from each other, so again, with the curation, it takes time to gather those pieces. So this piece is very special to me. This was a gift from Marcelo Bengochea. So this is one of Fernando Bengochea's original photos. It's one of the early pieces that he shot when he was exploring fine art photography, and very special piece. It's actually #1 of 10. For those of you who aren't familiar with Fernando Bengochea's story, he was an interior design photographer and a fine art photographer. Very well known. His work has graced almost every interior design magazine cover. He was partners with Nate Berkus. For those of you who may not be familiar, he was Oprah Winfrey's interior designer, did a lot of segments on her show, and has had an amazing career. And Fernando and Nate were in Sri Lanka in 2004 when the tsunami hit, and they were both swept out to sea. Nate survived incredibly, and Fernando was never found. So his brother Marcelo didn't want Fernando's art to die with him. So Fernando had pioneered woven photography, where he would take two identical images that he'd shot. He would slice one horizontally, he'd slice one vertically, and then he'd weave them back together. He was very passionate about this method. So after he passed in the tsunami, his brother Marcelo started weaving Fernando's photos. And I was so taken by their story when I heard it. I instantly started researching the art. I've bought several pieces for myself and for clients. And Marcelo and I became friends. He had his first US art exhibition in New York. In talking to Marcelo, he asked if I would be interested in curating exhibitions in Colorado, which I'd never done anything like that before, but absolutely I was going to say yes and figure it out. Long story short, we had two amazing exhibitions here in Colorado last year, and both venues have signed up to do another exhibition this year. So the staircase left me with an interesting challenge, because I had removed all the carpeting upstairs and pulled the flooring from downstairs throughout the entire townhome. I had to have carpeting on the treads of the stairs because I have a little dog and I didn't want him slipping and falling. But I didn't want just a patch of carpet amidst the other flooring. So what I decided to do was run the flooring that's everywhere else on the risers and then just carpet the treads. So this is my demijohn collection, and it's a cherished collection. This started before I was born. My mother, well, both my parents lived in Germany, and one day my mother saw about 50 of these sitting next to a dumpster being thrown out. So she took two, and my sister has one, and this is mine. And that's what started this collection about 20 years ago. And I've added the rest as I've traveled or just found pieces that I thought would be a perfect addition to the collection. The cowhide chair came from my days working at Williams-Sonoma Corporate. Mitchell Gold was manufacturing the Manhattan line of chairs and sofas for Pottery Barn. And they made one, we call it a demo chair, in cowhide for the buyers at Pottery Barn to consider. And the buyers decided not to pick up that chair. So the sample ended up in the corporate sample sale in the silent auction. And it was my very first sample sale. I had just started working there. You could enter one bid and that was it. And I had no idea. I knew what I thought it would retail for, but I had no idea what the culture of sample sale was. So I probably bid a little high. But as soon as I submitted the bid, I was instantly worried that I had bid too low, and I spent the rest of the day stressed out. But obviously, at the end of the day, when they announced who won which pieces, I won. I won the bid, and I was able to bring it home. And when you see it, I affectionately call it Angus, and you'll understand why when you see it, because it's just this beautiful brown cowhide. And this is Angus. Element that I waited the longest to complete in that room was actually the wood detail in the ceiling. I went through several conversations of different ideas with my contractor on what we could do in this coffered space, but I didn't want to rush into anything, and nothing really felt quite right. And then one day it just hit me, and I brought in my cabinet maker who also did the beam in the ceiling, to talk about what we could do in that coffered space. And my original thought was just to run some beams through there. But in design, it's very much a collaboration between the folks that I work with and a conversation. And he took my idea and expanded on it. And we ended up with the ceiling detail that you see. Another special piece in the bedroom is the black trunk that sits across from the foot of the bed. That is a tansu trunk from Japan. It was used to store kimonos. I'm not quite sure of the exact age, but when I saw it, I knew it was the perfect piece for this space, and it was for sale on First Dibs through an antique shop in Japan. I was a little apprehensive about spending that much for the piece, but looking back at it now, absolutely no regrets. It was the perfect piece to add to my home. And of course, it's covered in books and a few special pieces to me. I have a crystal egg collection that was gifted to me by one of my special clients, and I have a pheasant sculpture that had belonged to my dad. It was one of his favorite pieces. So I love waking up to the view of the ceiling and that trunk and those special pieces. I also bought one of the larger woven photos from Fernando and Marcelo Bengoechea. I didn't know where I was going to live when I bought that piece, actually, but I bought that piece, I don't want to say as a celebration, but as a reminder to myself that everything was going to be fine when I went through my divorce. I had it in storage for quite a while. When it was hung over that trunk, I just knew everything was exactly where it should be. So art in a home does not have to be expensive. I believe that art just needs to speak to you. For example, these two pieces are just postcards from a room that I stayed in my favorite hotel in Thailand. It's the Rakamanka in Chiang Mai. And they're just postcards that I brought home and had framed. The bathroom in the primary suite was interesting. It was really the only architectural change, I use that term loosely, that I made in this space. There was no door from the bedroom to the bathroom, and I hate that. But there was a door between the vanity and where the toilet and the shower are, which opened in towards the shower. So you basically had to straddle the toilet to open that door or open the shower door. It was really very awkward. So of course I immediately had that door removed and had that space recased, and added a contemporary sliding door to close off the bathroom from the primary. All of the finishes really throughout the home were a complete gut, which was kind of sad because it was a new build. So I was taking out pieces that were brand new. I really wanted to bring in authentic, natural materials where possible. So the shower was basically a plastic shell with a framed glass and silver and your standard builder grade materials. So I brought in, again, handmade tiles in the shower. I trimmed everything out in soapstone, painted the cabinetry. I used Sherwin-Williams Black Magic on the cabinets in there, and I absolutely love that color. It's just a very soft black. Brought in the quartzite countertops that I'd also put in the kitchen into both bathrooms upstairs as well. Of course, painting and adding a little bit of extra light. I brought in a sconce light from Europe. One of the things with the shower tile that I insisted on, I did not want any Schluter anywhere in this home. So this particular tile that I found from Spain, they glazed one side of each tile. So where there was an exposed edge, I just had my contractor set that glazed side facing out, and I just left it raw, which may seem a little bit unorthodox, but every time I look at it, I smile. I just love that detail. So when I originally moved in here, I had all the walls throughout the home painted a very soft light color. But I really am a fan of dark, moody rooms. And what I discovered was that when I was trying to convey that concept to my clients, talking about taking a room dark was really scary for them. And I decided at one point that I really needed to have an example of that I could bring and show clients what a darker, moody space can look like. It also personally didn't make me sad to have a space like that in my home. So I color drenched the entire office, the ceilings, the walls, trim, baseboard, doors, all in the same color. It's Sherwin-Williams iron ore. And then I had the sheen on the doors and the trim and the baseboard done in a semi-gloss where the walls are an eggshell. So there's a difference in the sheen, but they're the exact same color, but it still lends a dimension to it that I think is really cool. So when it came to finding the right rug for this space after I color drenched the office, I knew I wanted a dark rug. I knew I wanted wool. I knew I wanted flat weave. And I thought I found the perfect rug. But when it arrived, the colors were a little too bright, I felt, for the space. And I had actually arranged to return it when it dawned on me, why don't we see what the backside looks like? So this is actually the backside of the rug. So just a little helpful hack for you. If you get a flat weave rug and you feel like the colors are a little bit too bright, try turning it upside down. I like having one gallery wall somewhere. I do it in a lot of my projects, and my office was the perfect place for that to happen in my home. It is filled with pieces that mean so much to me. So my parents did an amazing job of curating a nice art collection when we lived in Thailand. This was my father's favorite piece, so I'm really thrilled to have it in my home now. But one of the pieces that I really cherish having is this. The Thais are known for their lacquerware. And typically you'll see it with inlay brass or bone, mother of pearl. What makes this piece especially interesting is that this image is created from broken eggshells. I have a photo of a street sign in Bangkok, which was the road that I lived on when I was a little girl. And when I went back last time to Thailand, I found where I had lived as a little girl, and the guide that was with me was a little nervous because I was stepping out in the street to take a shot of this street sign, but everything worked out just fine, and I smile every time I see that picture. I have a photo of my parents, which means the world to me, and pieces that have been gifted to me. As part of the art collection in my office, I have 3 photos that are very special to me. I hope I'm not overusing the word special on things, but I have a lot of pieces that are really special to me. These 3 pieces were taken by Roland Reed, who was a photographer in the early 1900s who documented Native American Indian life in the United States. The 3 pieces that I have hanging in my office in particular are Blackfoot Indian from Montana. And my father grew up in a cattle ranching family in Montana. They had a ranch up in a little town named Geraldine, which is outside of Great Falls, Montana. To have an opportunity to acquire these Roland Reed pieces was very special to me. I found them at a consignment shop up by Vail. So I also happened to get them at a great price, which was nice. But when I walked in the door and saw them, I knew instantly what they were. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I made an attempt to talk myself out of them. As soon as I got back to Timnath, I knew I'd made a mistake, but the shop was closed. It was late. So I made sure that the moment that shop opened, I was on the phone with them with a credit card. And I turned around and drove back up to Vail the very next day to go get them. So the secondary bathroom upstairs, I wanted to continue the feel that I had done in the primary bathroom. So I used the same handmade tile from Spain in both bathrooms. That bathroom had one of those plastic bathtubs that molds into the plastic walls. So that wasn't going to stay. And it gave me a chance to put in a really large alcove soaking tub, which I love. And it also gave me an opportunity to home another one of my antique mirrors. You'll notice as you look around my home, I have a small obsession with mirrors, and in particular antique mirrors. So it was the perfect wall for this particular mirror, which again, I found at a consignment shop. I love looking at antique stores and consignment shops. I have not ventured into Facebook Marketplace as much as some other designers do, but I do think it's a fabulous tool as well. I wanted that room again to feel older than new builds tend to feel. I found a great shower piece from Vintage Tub and Bath, who are located out on the East Coast. Again, trimming out in soapstone and adding quartzite to the countertops and repeating the black magic on the cabinets. I've been collecting art for about 3 decades now, and this was the very first piece of art. This is by a Colorado sculptor by the name of Judy Norquist, and she specializes in Arabian horse bronze sculptures. And I bought this back when I was 27. It was a little bit of a financial stretch, but I just really wanted to have one of her pieces, and it's been with me the longest, and I love having it here.